Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here to talk about South Park Season 23, Episode 2, Banned in China. Wow. Wow. I'm so shocked by this episode. And that's a common theme with South Park. A lot of the times you'll see the concept for an episode and you'll be like, that sounds like it'll be okay. And then you'll watch it and it will surprise you how funny it is and how creative it is. And this is one of those times. The first episode pales in comparison to this episode. That Mexican Joker, that pales in comparison to this masterful episode. And keep in mind, I am a very harsh critic when it comes to things. I mean, just look at the last couple of videos where I talked about Birds of Prey being a huge pile of shit. I'm not a guy who's gonna just be nice for the sake of being nice and not be truthful in my opinions. Because with this episode, it managed to take the storyline that I didn't like in the first episode and made that the whole episode and made it 10,000 times better. I can't believe it. This episode is this episode is the best cartoon comedy episode, or no, the best South Park episode since Hummels and Heroin 2 years ago. Yes, that's right. In my opinion, the last A-plus episode is Hummels and Heroin, which I love that episode. This episode, it does so many things right, and instead of really feeling disproportionate with the two storylines, it feels very natural because the two storylines are so connected together that it really feels like something in one thing. Like it feels very cohesive with these two storylines. You have Randy, he goes to China to try to make a deal with Integrity Farms, his weed farm, and it's basically continuing that story of where he's selling out and where he's trying to grow this big weed empire. And he goes there, and I mean, God, that's funny enough in of itself, because you go to China with drugs, you probably get executed or put in prison forever, and this kind of deals with that, and I love that. And I didn't even think about that because in this series and in real life we've been getting more used to weed being legal, and this not harmful plant is being able to be used by anybody, and we don't really think about we don't really have a negative view of that anymore, and this kind of brings us back. Like, you can see the backwardness of China's drug laws and in terms of weed. And there's so many good jokes in this episode. There was one scene where I was laughing my head off. I'm not going to give the scene away, but let's just say it has something to do with writing. And that's all I'll say. And this episode also has to do with filmmaking. It also has to do with the industry, with Stan. And Stan has a band, and it's basically an angry, growling band. I don't know what you call it exactly. I don't want to sound stupid and say something wrong about these bands, because I wouldn't know exactly what you would call it. It's an angry band. And this talent scout comes over, the same one who sold the PC Babies records or whatever. He comes over and offers them to make a biopic. I thought that was incredibly cool and creative, since there's been so many popular music biopics recently, like that Queen one from last year that everyone ranted and raved about, and then the Rocket Man one this year. And so I love this episode. I don't know what else to say. And another thing, I don't want to give too much away, but there is a certain character, and it seems like he could possibly be continuing to be a side character for the rest of the season, or maybe for a couple more episodes, and I'm really excited to see that, and maybe see some other characters connected to him that will be involved. I love this episode so much. I can't even describe it because this episode, it doesn't really. A lot of the South Park episodes, they have one really good joke, and then they kind of hammer it again and again and again, and it gets old really fast. But with this episode, it feels like they really hit their creative peak again, and they were able to do something magical. And so I give this episode an A+. It's hard to talk about these short episodes without getting into spoilers, so that's probably why I'm so mealy-mouthed. And so now I will get into spoilers. So Mickey Mouse is in this episode and all of his characters, and he kind of works out a deal with Randy, and they are in a business relationship, I think, now. And so maybe we'll get to see more Disney and more Mickey Mouse throughout the season. I also thought it was a very funny line when Mickey was like, "Oh, do I own you?" And he's like, "Not yet." And that's another very timely joke. See, this episode is very relevant to today's times, but then it's also timeless in the sense of talking about music biopics. Those have always been around. These shitty music biopics that are very formulaic and boring and bland. And then you have the, companies trying to sell things in China and trying to adhere to China's standards. And I don't want to say too much about China, but this episode paints a very clear picture, like they wanted to paint a picture, and I don't know if they're trying to create more parallels with The Godfather, because that was one theme that was in episode 1 that they hammered on was Randy being like Michael in The Godfather a little bit. They even played the music at one point, and so I'm wondering where that's going to go, because there was one scene in this episode where he... Sorry everybody, I got a call on my own phone, so it cut off the video, but spoiler alert, Randy kills Winnie the Pooh. And it's a scene that reminds me a lot of The Godfather, where that fat guy, he gets ambushed and he gets strangled with a wire and stabbed or whatever, and he has his tongue sticking out. That's what it reminded me of. And so I wonder what other Godfather parallels there are going to be. And I love that they kept Integrity Farms opening, because that song has really grown on me. I actually like that more than the real South Park theme song. And I guess this whole season is going to be all about Integrity Farms. So they're kind of going back to what they did like 3 seasons ago, where they did one storyline a season, I guess. And I don't mind that, because I really like this storyline now from this episode, and I think that this episode also, I loved how it talked about stuff adhering to China's standards, because every single thing that they wanted to do, China was like, nope, 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 because we know that like a lot of like popular movies, they can't be seen in China because of certain things that are in there, like magic, homosexuality, wizards, all that stuff. And what's funny is that the Chinese people, they just then pirate the movies. I mean, they think that they're banning these movies, but they're not. They're just making it so that these movies don't make any money, but people still see them, believe me. And so I love that they talked about that. Anyways, this episode was great. It was a huge surprise. I highly recommend it, and I think that it's one of the best South Park episodes in recent years. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel so that you can keep seeing my South Park reviews for Season 23. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. Goodbye, everybody.